Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Friday night, April the 1st. I'm glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into my shows. I really appreciate it. Everybody who's taking the time to listen to my shows live and on the archive. And I've done like around 650 shows, and that's a lot of shows. So I thank everybody who's tuning in. You know, I never really thought I'd be doing Blog Talk Radio this long, and I had no idea how long I'd be on here doing these shows, and it's been over a year now. It's almost heading to a year and a half. So it's just awesome. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. A lot of people I know who are listening to the shows, and then a lot of people I don't know, and I just thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say regarding child abuse prevention, and adult survivor issues and everything, right? So thanks very much for being here and tuning into my shows. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist or anything like that. And I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own Blog Talk shows. I just want to talk about, bring about, the issues of child abuse and child abuse prevention and survivor issues and a whole lot of other things. So I thought, well, while I'm doing Blog Talk Radio, I'll try to do as many shows as I can. But now I host right now Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio, and I used to be a co-host with a lady who was one of the regional directors, and but then she left and she was gone from Dreamcatchers, so I took the show on, and I've been doing that one as well. So I'm doing a lot of shows, and I just appreciate everybody who's taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I'm just a person who cares very much for children, and I think that we have to be these children's voice. Who else is going to do it? We all have an obligation, as far as I'm concerned, to be a voice for these children if we can. They have no way to protect themselves. They have no way to stand up for their rights, and they do have rights. Children have the right to life. They have the right to protection, to safety, security. A right to a good, healthy life, abuse-free life. They have the right to education, and they have the right to religion and their own nationality. They have the right to their own spirituality. They have the right, all of these human rights, And child rights, it's so important that we stand up for them because they have no way to protect those rights. And so we have to do it for them. And so it's very important that everybody get involved where you can, and so that's why I'm doing these shows, And so you have to listen at your own discretion because I'm talking about child abuse, and it's a very sensitive subject. A lot of people may find it disturbing, and, you have to ultimately, let's say this on every show, it's your discretion, so you please listen at your own discretion. And if you feel that the topics of abuse or violence may bother you, then you have to turn the show off. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you who's older, an adult, who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening to my shows or not. Mainly, it's all about stopping child abuse and preventing child abuse, but, there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and I don't know how young the children are who are listening to the shows, because it just depends on where the Blog Talk players are placed, right? So, have someone who's older, like a parent, caregiver, somebody who's an adult who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening to the show or not, right? They can help you if you have questions, right? So thanks, everybody, for being here. Last Wednesday night, we were looking at, it's a PDF that I found on the Child Welfare Information Gateway. That's www.childwelfare.gov. And this particular PDF is 102 pages long, so I don't think we'll cover the whole thing. But it's some good information. It's called Preventing Child Maltreatment. A guide to taking action and generating evidence. And this was put out by the WHO, the World Health Organization. It's a great PDF. I hope everybody will check it out. And it was also put out by the International Society for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. And it was put out in 2006. So it's not all that old, right? Because a lot of the material that is out there that's available, the most current stuff that we're seeing, is really from 2008, 2009. Because it takes a long time to compile these reports and put them into a written format, and to get this done, first of all they have to compile the information, and that can take a long time. Generally, we won't see anything for 2010 really until 2012, right? So it's always just lagging behind, and that's because it's such a huge issue trying to compile the statistics, compile the reports, compile the numbers, compile the facts. This everything to do with child abuse and child abuse prevention. But this particular article is really good, and this PDF, And I think that it just really brings to light what's going on around the world as far as preventing child abuse, and what needs to happen within, communities, within families, within, certainly within countries, really, to promote, whatever it's going to take to, programs and things placed, systems that are just, working within these communities, within these countries, to have something set up in place to prevent and stop child abuse, right? It's so important. So this PDF really addresses that. This is what they're talking about, and it's and a whole lot of other information as well. But it talks this PDF actually goes in talking about a lot about the child rights, and it's a lot of the countries around the world have signed the actual document, for the Convention on the Rights of the Child, right, from 1991. Many countries, have signed and they're legally bound, it says, to comprehensively address child maltreatment. And but a lot of times they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have things set in place, so that's what, that's really what they're working on, is getting, worldwide, getting countries set up so that they can, properly prevent child maltreatment, prevent child abuse, right? And many countries would like to, but they just don't have the people to do it. They don't have the resources. They don't have the systems not set up. You know what I mean? So they have to start from scratch, really, and it's a lot of work. Like even North America, with all the Canada and the United States, with all the programs, with the amount of money that's being pumped out every year because of child abuse, and these federally funded programs and everything that's out here, child abuse is still happening. Right, so this is a serious problem. You know what I mean? Like, this is not good. We have to change the hearts and the minds of the people, because people need to see what they're doing is wrong when they're abusing children of whoever, whether it's their own children or someone else's child. People have to see that what they're doing is wrong and stop abusing children, right? Because this is the issue. The main very core root of the problem is that people are abusing children. This is the issue. It's not that CPS or Child Protective Services or any of these groups out here who are trying to help children who have been abused, to get them out of their abusive homes and try to save their lives. It's not that it's not their problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, people have they tend to look at the issues on on the sidelines as if that's the root of the problem. You have to get down to the real root of the problem, and that is that people are abusing children. Right. Now, if we could get people to stop abusing children, there would be no need for Child Protective Services. Right. There'd be no need for DHS. There'd be no need for any of those groups, because people would not be abusing children. So therefore, we wouldn't need them. Right. But sadly enough, people are making the wrong choice, and they're abusing children. So CPS and all these Child Protective Services agencies and different groups out here who are helping abuse children, they're needed. And the system's not perfect, right? But if we can get people to stop abusing children, then we don't need any of that. So I think we need to focus on what the real problem is, and that's people are abusing children, and this needs to stop, right? So it's just very important that people realize this is the real root of the problem. And so advocacy is kind of where we left off. That's page 13 of this PDF. It says efforts to prevent child maltreatment should include activities to raise awareness among decision makers and the public of the need for investment in evidence-based prevention programs. Evidence-based, I think they're just meaning by that, I think they just mean programs that are proven to work. There's evidence that backs it to say, yes, this works. This program is working. It's helping to prevent child abuse, right? Campaigning efforts should also focus on the adoption of nonviolent social and cultural norms, especially as these relate to parenting. And for prevention and response work to be effective, 4 vital processes need to be observed when designing interventions. And these are to define the problem conceptually and numerically, using statistics that describe the scale of maltreatment and the characteristics of those most affected by it. The next one is to identify the causes and the risk factors that appear to affect susceptibility to maltreatment. For example, the factors that increase a child's risk of sexual abuse, or the obstacles to delivering effective child protection services, right? To take a look at the what are the risk factors, and what are some of the obstacles that actually prevent these services and these programs, from effectively helping children, because this is the case. I mean, this is what's going on around North America. This is what we see, where reports will be made, a child's being abused, and someone will make a phone call. The report will be done. The people will come, the Child Protective Services or whoever is in the area, in that local area, will come and they will investigate. And so many times, children slip through the cracks, right? And it's not a perfect system, that's for sure. And we need to find out why, and we need to, as a society, as a whole, we need to fix this. A handful of people can't do it, right? It's going to take a whole lot of people, who really care about children and want to see child abuse stopped. And that's why I just wanted to be one more voice, really, because, one more voice added to all the other voices, because that's the whole issue, Like I thought, I can add my voice to their voices, and then somebody else can add their voice to my voice. And we can all become one huge, loud, noisy voice out here to say, let's get this done. You know what I mean? Like, this should not be happening year after year after year, children losing their lives for no reason. There is no reason to kill a child. There's no reason to abuse a child. There's no reason, period, to ever hurt a child on purpose. There's no reason at all. And yet there's so many people that are still doing it. And you just, I just look at these headlines and I look at these poor children and I think, oh my God. And then I look at these people who are actually the perpetrators of the abuse, found guilty and convicted. And I look at them and I think, that is so sad that a person would choose to do these things to children. I don't care whether it's physical abuse. I don't care, whether it's verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, neglect, child sexual abuse. It's all so incredibly damaging. And there is absolutely no excuse for it. There's no excuse for abuse, right? People, try to use all kinds of excuses, but there's no excuse for abuse because it's a choice. People don't have to kill the children. They don't have to kill anybody else's child either. They don't have to hurt, abuse, and maim and torture a child or anyone else's child or their own children, but they do. They don't have to sexually use a child, but they do, or someone else's child, right? I mean, people are choosing to do this stuff. This is a choice they literally make. They say they must wake up in the morning and just say, well, I guess I'm just going to, hurt this child. Because that's what they do. When they choose to physically abuse a child, they're making the choice to do that. And a lot of people say, oh, they just lost control, they didn't know what they were doing, and they went overboard with punishment, with some sort of discipline, and turned into abuse, and they killed the child. No, there's no excuse for that. There's no such thing as going overboard or getting out of control with abuse, because when you study what abuse is, it's a choice. It's a way to maintain or stay in control, right? It's not losing control. It just appears to be that way. I study this stuff, so I know, right? It appears that people lose control. It's like somebody would say, oh, they got out of control, they lost control, and they killed their child. No, what it is they're staying in control, and they killed their child in order to maintain the control, right? I mean, that is absolutely, there's no excuse for that. And, we have, if this does not make us want to stand up and say, enough is enough, how many more children have to die? That's a really good question. How many more children have to die every day, worldwide, before we stand up and say, enough is enough? People, stop abusing your children and stop abusing other people's children. They're not put here on the planet to be abused. I don't mind saying it. I know it offends a lot of people. I mean, there's people out here that are totally offended by what child abuse advocates are talking about. They don't want to hear about it. And it makes me wonder why. You know what I mean? Because it's what we're doing is the right thing. We're standing up for the protection of children at all costs, at all costs. Because their lives are precious and they do not deserve to be treated this way, And so it's a huge issue. People need to see this, and they need to understand that child abuse is wrong in every way. There's nothing okay about it, and it's against the law, And we need to come together as a society, as a world population, and say, how many children have to die before we get the proper programs in place, before we have enough funding to support these programs, before we have enough people that are willing to do the job, you know what I mean, and get this work done. It's absolutely horrific, right? So it's something it needs to stop. And they said with knowledge of the risk and protective factors to design interventions and programs that have a high probability of being effective in minimizing the risk factors, whether these interventions are targeted at individuals or entire communities, they need to be evaluated to determine their effectiveness. And I mean, that's just it. There's $105 billion being pumped out annually in the United States because of child abuse. Not to stop it, but just because of it. So, I say, why not pump about $700 billion into the system, into the programs that they know are working, and cut off some of the programs that aren't working, find out what programs are absolutely not producing any good results at all, and just drop the funding. And then find out these, because they know which groups are working and which ones aren't. They know which programs work and which ones don't. And what they need to fund the ones that actually work, and then promote, and get more going, right? Because if something's working, then it needs to be funded, and it needs to get going nationwide, right? Because there are programs actually that do work, and they have found that they do work, and they're completely 100% doable, but they're just not funded, right? And so it's very unfortunate because they're funding other things that don't work. So where's this $105 billion going? It's not going to stop child abuse. It's just because of child abuse, right? It's really, really sad, right? Because children in the meantime are dying, and most of them are so young, and as little babies, they're not even cognitive enough to know that there's people out here fighting for their lives. I mean, it's just a harsh reality, right? It's a wake-up call. I've had to deal with this my whole life, as everybody knows who listens to my shows. So it's not a wake-up call for me, because I grew up this way with people thinking it was perfectly okay that my parents would abuse me and that a sibling would sexually abuse me. You know what I mean? And there are people that know me even today from my youth and from my childhood who still think it's okay what my parents did to me and to us. And even though they were brought up on charges, they were busted for child abuse, and they would still say that that's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. And I'm on a bit of a rant here tonight, but it's just the issue that it's just the attitudes of people. It's just it's like, what are you thinking? It is not okay for a parent to beat on their child and to break their head with a rolling pin. It's not okay to slam their children into walls and to threaten their lives. It's not okay at all, and that's how I lived my whole childhood, right? Being called names and slapped around, bloody noses and beaten, and sexually used by a brother, right? And people say that, oh, well, it's okay. You lived through it. You survived, It's like, no, it's not okay, right? It's so absolutely horrific to me that people back abusers and back up abuse. I will continue to stand up against this for the rest of my days, because I got off the couch 4 years ago and I made a commitment. I said no more silence. I am breaking the silence. I'm going to, this is it. I'm going to spend the rest of my days making as much noise as possible, because there's so many people that just think it's okay to sexually use a child. It's like, where in their minds they get this thought or this idea from, I don't know, but it's not okay. It never will be okay, right? It's not okay to beat and abuse a child, and to burn a child, to stab a child, to throw a child down the stairs. It's not okay. But there's people out there that think it's perfectly all right, And these are people that we work with. These are people that live on our streets. And these are probably people that are abusing their children. It just makes me sick to my stomach that there's so many people out here who think it's okay to abuse a child and that it's fine. It's like, no, it's not fine. And the more people we can get speaking out against this, and the more people we can get standing up to say, no, it's not okay, it's not acceptable, it never will be acceptable, and it's against the law, the more people will start to hear this, it starts to weigh on them. It starts to wear on them, and it starts to break them down, and they start to realize that, yeah, I guess, there is something to that. It's absolutely wrong to sexually use a child. It's absolutely wrong to abuse a child in any way. Call a child names, emotionally abuse a child, psychologically abuse a child, physically abuse a child, neglect a child. It's all wrong, right? And so, I don't mind standing up for truth. And child abuse is wrong. That's truth. So I have no problem talking about this stuff. You know what I mean? This is absolutely pathetic and ridiculous that half the world's population thinks that abuse is okay. Where is their thinking? It's like, no, it's not okay, and it never will be okay, right? And then another thing that they try to promote within countries as far as child abuse prevention goes, to disseminate information about the effectiveness of interventions and increase the scale of proven effective interventions. And so whether for preventing maltreatment or for improving responses, the need is for high-quality, reliable information. Research, routine data collection, and monitoring and evaluation of programs are essential to the success of a systematic approach to child maltreatment. And I mean, over in North America here, we have these things in place pretty much. The evaluation of programs, they're continually monitoring, and you have to keep track of everything. Every single thing is kept track of, right? But in other countries, that's the issue. They don't have these things set up, and so the worldwide process of knowing whether or not programs work in many countries is a lengthy process because they don't have the information. They don't know whether it's working or not because there's half of it's not being recorded, or it's not being recorded properly. And so, it's I think they're really trying to push that. And I think lots of countries are trying to get on board. And many of them would love to have the structure that we have and these programs and the support that we have in North America, but they just don't have it. They don't have the people they don't have the manpower. They don't have the people that can even do it, you know what I mean, or even would. And they don't have the funding to get this stuff going because it takes money. And so, it's harsh. It's really harsh, but around the world it's a huge issue. So they go on to talk about this, the entire PDF. Like I said, it's 102 pages long, so I know we're definitely not going to cover it. But chapter 1 is the nature and consequences of child maltreatment. So what is child maltreatment? They said child maltreatment refers to the physical and emotional mistreatment, sexual abuse, neglect, and negligent treatment of children, as well as to their commercial or other exploitation. It occurs in many different settings, and the perpetrators of child maltreatment may be parents and other family members, caregivers, friends, acquaintances, strangers, others in authority such as teachers, soldiers, police officers, clergy, employers, healthcare workers, other children. Right? Child maltreatment is a complex issue. Its dynamics and the factors that drive it, as well as effective prevention strategies, all differ markedly according to the victim's age, the setting in which the maltreatment occurs, and the relationship between victim and perpetrator. And they said violence against children by adults within the family is one of the least visible forms of child maltreatment, as it takes place in the privacy of domestic life, but it is nonetheless widely prevalent in all societies. And child maltreatment by parents and caregivers gives rise to particular difficulties when designing strategies for prevention and victim services, since the perpetrators of the maltreatment are at the same time the source of nurture for the child. And also, it's nearly impossible. Like, I mean, you can't put a video camera inside every single home, and say, oh, that parent stepped out of line. I guess we better go on over there. They're abusing their child. They're burning their child again with cigarettes. Oh, there goes that one sexually using his kid again. It's unfortunate that we can't. I would really like to see that. You know what I mean? Big Brother. I almost think, what's wrong with that? People can't govern themselves, so we need government. People can't stop abusing children, so why can we not protect children? Children should have the right to protection at all times, and they do as far as my books go. And I think that the reason we need police is because we cannot police ourselves. The reason why we have to have jails full of all kinds of people who make the wrong choices and hurt people and do horrible things is because people will not stop doing these horrible things. It's the only reason why we need police. Otherwise, we wouldn't need police. Hey, I'm all for the police. You know what I mean? We need more because there's a lot of sick individuals out here who are causing people a lot of grief, And I'm all pro-government. You bet I am. And the reason why? People can't govern themselves. The minute people started to be able to govern themselves, this would be a better world. But since people can't govern themselves and they can't make the right choices and they do the most hurtful, horrific, heinous things to people, well, there you go. Then we got to have government. Then you got corruption within governments. Right? I mean, I think people should just be accountable for their behavior and stop doing these stupid things and stop hurting people, right? And especially their family members. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely horrific. And I think that, shame on the people that are doing this. That's where the shame goes. On the abusers, because they're choosing to do what they're doing. And out of sheer, complete ignorance or hatred or whatever's going on inside their heart and their mind, it's absolutely pathetic. And it just makes me angry because, we wouldn't even need this stuff if people would stop abusing their children. It's absolutely ridiculous that people think that it's okay to do this stuff, right? So I mean, and within homes, what are you supposed to do? You know, it's like I said, you can't put a video cam in every single home. You know, be watching the parents, right, or watching the siblings, because siblings abuse people too. You know what I mean? Siblings abuse other siblings as well. Children abuse other children, right? Anybody can be an abuser, right? Grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, cousins, you name it, neighbors, right? Like they said, coaches, teachers, you know, doctors, police officers, everybody. Anybody can be an abuser. Healthcare workers, right? It's absolutely horrific that people would think that it's okay to do this stuff and think that they can get away with it. And that's why we have to have laws, right? And that's why we have to have police. That's why we have to have government, because we can't govern ourselves. People are so, I don't know, what's the matter with them? That they think it's okay to do this stuff and that they don't have to, that it's fine and they shouldn't have to pay a price for it if they get caught. You know what I mean? Well, it's not fine. It's against the law. And, you know, it just makes me sick that people just choose to abuse a child. I will never, ever, ever stop talking about this. You know, I will continue to talk about this until I leave this earth and make as much noise and write as many books and do as much as I can to make as much noise as I possibly can to say that child abuse is incredibly wrong. I add my voice to everybody else's, and, you know, I've got nothing better to do but make a whole lot of noise, right? So it's, you know, this is ridiculous. I hope everybody will stand up and get on board with a group in your own area that you know is doing some great work. You know, get on board with the national group, get on board with the local groups, but get on board with somebody who's doing something to help protect children and to help save children's lives, because they are precious and they are counting on us. And, you know, so many of them will not get any help, and so many will lose their lives tonight, you know. And so many will just continue to be abused. You know, the abuse will just continue. No one will ever know, unless the child, you know, decides to tell somebody down the road. You know, as an adult survivor, maybe. And it's just really sad. Never should happen, and this is incredibly wrong. And what I like about this PDF is that it's from the World Health Organization. It's really taking a look at the worldwide issue instead of just, you know, like a North American view or a United States view or a Canada view. It's taking a look at the worldwide view. And I think it's very important, you know, for us to remember that children are being abused all around the world, and always have been. And, you know, it's not just, you know, one particular country or one particular part of the world, right? And this is just, it's just horrible, absolutely horrific. So they said, while it's not possible to make any absolute statement about the numbers of children harmed by parents and other family members, child maltreatment is recognized internationally as a serious public health, human rights, legal, and social issue. And the nature and the severity of both the violence itself and its consequences can vary extremely widely. In extreme cases, child maltreatment can lead to death. In a majority of situations involving maltreatment, however, the physical injury itself has a less severe effect in terms of damage to the child's well-being than the acute psychological and psychiatric consequences and the long-term impact on the child's neurological, cognitive, and emotional development and overall health. And I'm a picture, I'm just one person who survived child abuse, and have actually been able to do quite well. You know what I mean? I think I've done it extremely well, because I've been able to pull myself out of hell and see the light and stick around long enough to feel proactive about doing something good and get, you know, and trying to be a voice for these kids out here. You know what I mean? And so many people will suffer their whole lives. And sometimes many survivors of child abuse will never tell anyone they were ever abused, and they suffer with it their whole entire lives. And so nobody ever knows, you know, that they were abused, and it's a lonely place to be. You know what I mean? It's absolutely horrific. And so yeah, we'll take another look at this on not Monday night, because Monday night I have Ray Luskin coming on the show. This is going to be great. We're going to be talking about why survivors don't disclose the abuse, and sort of taking a look at some of the good points about disclosing, and some of the points that may be not so good about coming forward and talking about abuse. You know what I mean? There's different sides and different ways to look at it. So we're going to be talking about that Monday night here on the show, and you can check the show times, because I'm actually going to move the show time for that night, for Monday night. That's April the 4th, Monday night. And Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, I'll be back on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio on Monday night as well. And I'll be on the weekend. You can check my show page. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm sorry I missed my show this morning. I did sleep in past 2 alarms, and I was late for work and everything. So I'm really sorry for anybody who was actually here tuned in for that show. I rarely do that, but once in a while I turned my alarms off, and I was just, sleeping away there. So I do apologize for that. So sorry for anybody who was actually here waiting for me. Sorry about that. Have a great night, everybody. Take good care. Make sure that you know the signs and symptoms of abuse, and look out for the kids in your own life. Look out for the kids around you and make sure that they're not being abused. I know I'm constantly keeping an eye open, and because we have to. These little children are counting on us, right? Have a great night, everybody. Take good care.